in September, the government are going to give 120 million euros back to people who have registered with Irish Water. Why are they going to do that? To try and diffuse a potential threat to their re-election prospects. 120 million euro would purchase between 500 and 600 houses, and we have almost 600 families living in hotel bedrooms. Every one of them could be housed by Christmas if we had the will to do it.
All you had to do was care. Oh, keep on drinking, thinking that nobody is aware. In your world, can you ever see everything you did has affected me? I'll go try to wash my hands of you this time, but emotion led me to be blind, I know.
The government have 1.5 billion to spare for coming up to the next election, coming up to the next budget, and they have decided that 750 million of that is going to be given back to taxpayers. Why? In order to soften them up for the election.
Carry on. Too many times and nothing new. Hoping you would come through. I can't live like this no more. Walk on out a different door. Oh, should I look away, never say all these things, or could there be a silver lining, finding it before the death of me?
When I was in the day centre, I used to go on the internet after IE, and I used to go into Focus Ireland. Sometimes I go on the Echo, but the same things on the Echo as in Focus Ireland, so I had time to bother with the Echo. But just ringing them up and trying to find places I could. And most of them, as soon as you ring, they're gone because there's so many people looking. As soon as they're being put on the thing, they're nearly being caught straight away, taken off the market.
Carry on, carry on. Carry on.
Some landlords find out you're homeless, like they don't want to give you a chance even to prove that you can hold down a place or anything like that. Just before you go up there, like, just get a clean, change clothes and all, go up. And stay, I said I was staying with a friend of mine or staying with a family member or something. Like you said, somebody say you're homeless or anything, sign or anything, and that was it. Like they'd say, oh, they get onto you, but they'd never get back onto you. 480s, the rent loans, the welfare won't go up any higher than that, even though it's only for the sake of a couple of pounds, they won't do it, so that's why some people can't take places unless they have their own money. I was getting fed up with doing it, like, I knew I had to keep doing it or it'd be another winter out in the street.
This silver lining, finding it before
In the Dublin area, 5 new people becoming homeless every day. That's the official statistics. So the numbers have gone through the roof. The number of families becoming homeless has increased dramatically. 2 years ago, Focus Ireland would say they would deal with 7 or 8 families a month. Last year they dealt with an average of 40 families a month becoming homeless, and indeed in April of this year they dealt with 71 families becoming homeless in that month alone. There are approximately 37,000 residential homes in mortgage arrears of more than 2 years, and another 16,000 buy-to-lets in mortgage arrears of more than 2 years. And the banks themselves estimate that 25,000 of those are going to be repossessed by the banks. I understand that Dublin City Council has now run out of money continue bringing the voids back into action. And if that's true, it's an absolute scandal that they could have empty buildings lying there while families are living in hotel bedrooms.
They basically told me they had nothing for me. They have nothing for women and children, nothing for families. They sent me around to Focus Ireland. I went around there, sat there and rang every hotel in Dublin to put us up, and not one of them would accept the Dublin City Council payments. I went back into them the next day, the same thing, sat there all day, nothing. I was crying my eyes out, nothing, they can't do anything for me. I ended up getting a hotel out in Dunleary, in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know, I had no money, me and the kids. Didn't know, we don't know Dunleary. We got thrown out there with no money or nothing, put up into a hotel for 2 nights. Then we had to come back to Dublin and go back down and do the same thing again. And we couldn't find anywhere again.
A silver lining, finding it before the death of me.
Families will know maybe a couple of months in advance that they're going to be turfed out, because they're either the rent is going up, or the landlord is selling the house, or the house is being repossessed by the banks. But until they actually become homeless, they can't even approach the homeless services. In Dublin, there'd be a 200 or 300 euros gap between what the rent allowance gives you and what the landlords are demanding. There's a huge disconnect between the rent supplement and the rents being demanded. The rent supplement has been decreased since the recession by 26%. The Department of Social Protection's own policies are preventing people from scrimping and saving and going without food in order to top up their rent supplement in order to keep the roof over their head. The Department of the Environment are at odds with the Department of Social Protection. The Department of the Environment are trying to reduce homelessness. The Department of Social Protection are directly responsible for hundreds of families becoming homeless because they've refused to increase the rent supplement. The two exits out of homelessness are traditionally into the social housing or into the private rented sector. There is virtually no social housing to move into. And the demand for the private rented sector is far outstrips supply, so it's gone beyond crisis to my mind.
In 2011, we met 38 people in the entire year sleeping rough. Last year it was 284 people. And so far this year, that's to the end of July, we're talking about somewhere around the region of 240 people. So that's a huge increase in just the space of 3 years. There are fewer houses to rent in the market than there have been in decades. Rents are spiralling out of control. People can't get mortgages, which is adding to the pressure on the rental market. The rent supplement that the Department of Social Protection gives people if they need help with their rent does not meet the current market rents. It's almost like a perfect storm where the housing crisis is concerned. And particularly for people who are homeless, who find themselves vulnerable to homelessness, are virtually excluded from the housing market. They find it particularly difficult to access the housing market for several reasons. Number one, the rents are extremely high and continue to increase. Number two, rent supplement from the Department of Social Protection doesn't come near matching current market rents. There's a huge stigma around homelessness. We did some research a couple of years ago among people staying in our emergency shelter, just about looking at the barriers they face in getting back into the workplace. And one of the interesting things that came out of it was well over 80% felt that they wouldn't get a job if people knew they were homeless. All the statistics would show that the longer somebody stays in homeless services, the harder it is for them to leave homeless services. You know, the way the homeless services in Ireland are configured is that you almost have to earn your place on the housing list. So if you're sleeping rough, you almost have to earn your bed in the shelter. Once you get into an emergency shelter, you almost have to earn your place in transitional accommodation. Once you've done your time in transitional accommodation, so to speak, you earn a place in housing. It's a very long and a very expensive pathway for somebody to get out of homelessness using that model. There's a lot of people who are living on the edge of homelessness. I mentioned earlier that up to half of the people using our Superun are in housing and are housed securely, but they're on the verge of losing that housing because they just can't afford to keep it.
Like most people there that have been homeless, I tell you, like people don't really listen to you when they're homeless. They just kind of walk over you, like not many you can do about it. Some people look down their nose at you, other people that treat you well, like some look after you. Like sometimes there, like you get a person there, they go in and buy your whole set of clothes. The other people in there, you tell you get up and get a job. Sure, you can't get a job if you know where to live.
It's heartbreaking when I hear some of the horrendous stories that people come in and they share with us. I mean, talking about people from various addiction issues to violence, to domestic violence, and knowing that there's somebody experiencing domestic violence who come to our doors asking for accommodation 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the day, coming back. We're inundated with people. There was one day last week where we had to turn away 16 individuals by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's 16 people coming into the day centre in the morning, between 8:30 and 1 o'clock. Very hard for the people to be turned away, very hard for the staff, seeing people come back every day. And again, the simple fact is there isn't enough spaces to accommodate people. We've had to raise our emergency beds by 3 over the last year, and even at that we're now up to 47. We're still turning people away every single day. I don't think there's been a spare emergency bed inside Cork City for the last 2 to 3 years. If the crisis continue, or if the rents continue, we will see a big upsurge in a new wave of people becoming homeless who never experienced homelessness before.
Carry on.
Our Superun service, there's people coming into our Superun services in the evening. We're having to turn people away. It's really, really difficult. And I suppose the crux of it all is that simply there isn't enough of housing out there. And my concern and my worry is that it will get worse before it will get better.
Many of the people becoming homeless today never for one moment in their lives ever thought they would be homeless. Many of them have worked all their lives until the recession came. Many of them have rented accommodation for many, many years without any difficulties, and now find themselves unable to pay the rent. We have dealt with one young man. He has his own little flat. He was paying €950 a month. The landlord came along and said next month it's €1,300. He went to the Department of Social Protection to look for an increase in the rent supplement. They said no. So he gets evicted and he becomes homeless. This is the most worrying aspect of homelessness today. There are about 550 families who are homeless in the Dublin area, about another 60 families homeless around the rest of the country, and they're being accommodated insofar as possible in bed and breakfast and hotel bedrooms. That's financially unsustainable, because for every 50 people in an hotel bedroom it's costing €1 million per year.
I'm just getting a night here and there and then just thrown from pillar to post. They just don't know whether they're coming or going. They don't even want to stay in a hotel with me.
There are some families who don't immediately get to hotel bedrooms. I had one family ringing me up at 9:30 at night asking could they sleep in my car. They had been told no accommodation was available. I know of other families who've gone out to the airport to spend the night. Other families may be sleeping in their cars if they're lucky enough to have a car to sleep in. So sometimes some families are putting the children into care because the alternative is the children sleeping on the street with the parents.
And the Dublin City Council paid for another 2 nights for me. And then I was thrown out there on Saturday, and now I'm the same again. Nowhere to go. The kids are back in school in 2 weeks, and I just don't know what I'm going to do. Alright, buddy.
Too many times and nothing new.
So families becoming homeless are really, that is the biggest crisis at the moment. I think we are going to see whole families living on the streets in the not so distant future. And the only place I've seen that before is India.
We're going out a different door.
Many families will do anything to avoid homelessness. Even during the Celtic Tiger years, when we had more money than we knew what to do with, the number of homeless people doubled in this country. Why? Because the successive governments relied on the private market to provide social housing. So they relied on the private rented sector, and they depended on Section 5 of the Planning and Development Act 2000, which required developers to hand over or to sell to the local authority 20% of their residential output for social or affordable housing. So the problem has just been increasing because social housing has been ignored by successive governments. The commitment now to provide social housing is very welcome, but they have a lot of catching up to do. Focus Ireland have called it a child welfare crisis, and I would accept that.
Too many times and nothing.
And people started raising money for me to get a deposit for a flat then. That's how I got this place. We've heard the appeal went out Red FM, and landlord rang Red FM, and they got on to another woman and she got on to me, so I came up and viewed the place and it was being done up, so I said I'd take it, and in the space of a week I was moved in and everything.
If you've got housing with the right care and support package to go along with that housing, then all of the research suggests that that's very successful in terms of getting people out of homelessness and staying out of homelessness. Prevention is a lot better and a lot cheaper than the cure, we would argue, both economically and on the person's mental and physical health. And I think if people had a right to housing, then it would be a lot harder for them to lose their housing and end up homeless in the first place. At this stage, there is a housing and homelessness crisis in Ireland. Nobody can hide from that. It has to be a political issue. It has to be an election issue. People need to feel secure in their homes in the first place, and to feel secure enough that they feel they won't become homeless.
There have been measures introduced by the government to try and alleviate the homeless crisis and the social housing crisis, but I think too little. The new policy is housing first. You give people a home, even if they have serious personal problems, you give them a home and then you help them address their problems. In New York they did that, and after a year 95% of those homeless people still retained their own accommodation. In Toronto they did it, and after 2 years 80% of the homeless people were still living in their own accommodation. So housing first works. Well, the government should do two things. It should increase the rent supplement so that families and individuals can afford to stay in their apartments with the increased rents being demanded. And secondly, they have to introduce emergency rent controls to prevent a landlord increasing the rent. The example I gave you, €950 up to €1,300 in 1 month. If they did one or both of those, you could reduce the flow of people and families coming into homelessness to a trickle, but they won't. Last November, the Minister Alan Kelly said he was considering rent controls, emergency rent controls. In June, he said he was actively going to introduce emergency rent controls. We've heard nothing since. That does not suggest to me a sense of urgency.
A silver lining, finding it before the death of me.
I'm not better off. Like, I don't have to worry about where I'm sleeping tonight. I can come and go as I please. I don't have to be worrying about what's going to be happening or where do I have to go today tonight to get a place. I want to be staying on day, so I know I have a roof over my head. Thanks to people of Cork, like, only for them I wouldn't have this place. I'd be sitting out in the street.
I'll carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on. And I know there's light inside your soul. You have to fight your mind to grow. And if you find someone you